Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program today, Assemblyman Tom McKevitt. Tom McKevitt represents the 17th Assembly District in New York State, an Assembly District that includes parts of Nassau County. We want to thank you folks all across Long Island for tuning in for our program today. And Tom McKevitt, nice to see you.
Great to see you, Mike.
You know, you're here in Albany. The legislative session ended a few weeks ago now.
Thank goodness.
You can go home. I'm sure there's people in Nassau County that want to see you down there.
They're seeing me. I'm getting around there, but good to see them once again because, again, once we're in the session of June, I'm up here full time. So
that's it. The first 6 months, you're ours.
Yep.
And then we kind of kick in. It is nice to see you back, and this is our first chance to sit down and chat and talk about what happened in the 2011 legislative session. Some call it the most productive session we've seen in Albany in a long time. Others might agree, others might disagree. We'll see what Tom McKevitt thinks about that coming up. But we want to start off with a cool event that you do in your district every year.
That's right.
And I think it's fabulous. It's all about informing your constituents and the people of the area if your car is safe, in particular as it pertains to the seating of your children.
Exactly. You know, actually studies show that maybe up to sometimes 80% of car seats are not installed correctly. So every single year we go and we get the word out to the community and we'll spend a day. And this is actually done in conjunction with the Nassau County Traffic Safety Board. Chris Mistron is their coordinator, and he has a reputation of he installs thousands of car seats each year.
He's the man, right?
His name is Car Seat Chris, and there's really behind it, as we can see, he's showing one of our constituents how the car seat works, how to appropriately put the straps on the child, making sure that it's in there correctly and snugly done. Because God forbid you ever have to go and that car seat is needed for its intended purpose, but you want to make sure it works.
You know, it's like anything else, too, where the technology just changes, but like with electronics, you got to keep up with these things. Some people hand down car seats from one generation to another to another. You might come to find out that what was considered in vogue a few years ago isn't necessarily the case anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, even the cars are redesigned, and they now have what's called the latch system, where instead of having to use the seat belts, you actually just use some hooks and put them into the anchors in the car seat of your car, which is a much more secure and firm way to keep the car seat in there. So the car seats are updated. The federal government does put requirements in vehicles to make children as safe as possible. And I'll have to say, when infants are involved in these accidents, they're usually the safest one in the car. Thank goodness they're our most precious cargo you ever carry, and we'll make sure that they're safe.
Usually they are the safest, but if things aren't put in properly, aren't hooked up properly, or if you're using, again, some of that outdated equipment, that might put the children more at risk. So I really encourage anyone who sees those notices go out to stop by and talk to the man.
That's right.
He's the guy who knows all the ins and outs about car seat safety.
It's been such a successful program. We're going to do another one this fall, as a matter of fact. We're going to be setting up the date for that. But again, we have a line of people coming. And the most incredible thing is the most common customer we have are parents with 2-week-old, 4-week-old seeing these tiny little babies, but first thing you want to make sure is the car seat is installed there correctly. And one other point that Chris mentions there, people sometimes put accessories in the car seat. They'll put these little mirrors so they can see the children, and he says that's one of the worst things you can do, because during an accident, those things can become projectiles. And you may be trying to go and get a look at your child, but in essence, when the car gets thrown around, it could actually hurt them. So the most important thing is keep it as clutter-free back there as possible. Don't put any attachments to the car seat, because again, you think you're doing something good, but if you're in something 40 miles an hour and you're coming to a dead stop, someone could wind up getting hurt.
Next time you're in Albany doing one of these shows with us and you know what that date's going to be, we'll talk about it then, right? Okay, fair enough. Again, the 2011 legislative session, productive or not? Tom McKevitt, what's your call?
Certainly the governor got a lot more accomplished than I ever thought he'd get accomplished. Almost his entire agenda, which he sought out to do, he was able to get finished. And I don't think any governor in the last 30, 40 years, you could say something to that. Certainly we had an on-time budget, a budget which didn't increase taxes, a budget which cut state spending for the first time in well over a decade. I think set forth the tone that the state government couldn't continue spending like it has in quite some time.
Now, that was the first half of the session was geared solely towards that one event. Rightly so. It's the biggest, most important thing the legislature does in any given year.
Right.
And it was successful in that it was on time and rather historic in that it spent less than what prior budgets had spent here in Albany. That's not something that happens hardly ever.
Yeah. It's almost unheard of.
Yeah.
It really is.
So, all right, so that was the first half, and then there was all the wondering afterwards. Okay, the governor, and a lot of people gave the governor credit for achieving that particular budget on time, historic budget. Is he going to be able to follow that up? And he, to his credit, stayed aggressive, traveled around the state. I don't think it was officially known as the Prod the Legislature tour, but that's kind of how it came out because
that's how we received it.
Yeah, he was pushing the legislature to do 3 specific things: property tax cap,
yes,
ethics reform, and same-sex marriage.
Yes.
Again, as you said, the governor, though, got all the major legislative initiatives through that he wanted.
He did. And again, if he'd asked me back in April whether he could do that, I would say absolutely not. So, you know, he did pull off quite a hat trick there.
Well, you know, what do you base that on? The prior governors? Because we've had some pretty ineffective governors leading up to, this is our 4th governor in 4 years.
Yes.
This is, but he pulled it off.
Right.
So, as you look back, Tom McKevitt, on this session, what do you think? I mean, the product that came out of it, you happy with it? I mean, would you say, I mean, the governor got what he wanted. Did Tom McKevitt get what he wanted?
You know, certainly I think the most significant piece of legislation to get passed was a tax cap. And on Long Island, we have been struggling with the onerous taxes for years. You have senior citizens who I always say are house rich but cash poor. And the taxes are just driving people out of the state. I hear it every single day. People who would like to stay here, but the taxes are driving them out. So I think that it came to the point where a tax cap did become a necessity, and to make sure that there has to be some sort of, you know, cap on. There are even some people who are unhappy with the tax cap by saying, well, there'll still be increases each year. You know, when are we going to stop this? But I said the fact they stopped at 2% is still earth-shattering for the state. We've never done anything in this instance whatsoever. You know, you have Jersey, you have Massachusetts which have tax caps, and I think that New York actually got accomplished was, you know, quite significant as far as concerned. My biggest concern is how the tax cap is going to work in future years, and it really comes down to education. And you know, when you look at the Massachusetts tax cap, which has been used as a model how to do it in the United States, one important thing you have to keep in mind is the reason why the Massachusetts tax cap worked is that as the local governments were restrained in how much they could provide for their services, the state government then came in and was able to go and increase the spending and help supplement that in a very controlled way. And reports make it very clear that unless we on the level in the state system are able to go and make life easier for them, it's not going to work. I think the biggest, problem with the tax cap bill was the mandate relief. We could have done a much better job on mandate relief for our local governments. We did about $125 million is what we're going to up getting accomplished. We really should have done $300 to $400 million. I think New York State has to lead the way and say, you know what, before we're going to go and do these types of expenditures in local governments, we from the state should follow the lead. And I'll give you one example of something which didn't get passed. Fire ropes. Every single fire department in New York State, except that New York City, is required to have fire ropes. So in case a firefighter is in a building that's burning and needs to get off of it and there's no ladder available for it, these ropes would enable the firefighter to rappel down the building.
So he's got to carry this rope with him.
And every firefighter is required to have their own set of ropes. So in some fire departments, this is costing $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to purchase these ropes. Now here's the problem I have. In 90% of my district, the tallest building is 30 feet. Easily, any ladder or any truck is going to be able to get that firefighter off the roof onto the ground, and they're really absolutely not needed in the majority of Long Island. Yet the state legislation requires them to do it. That was one thing we were pushing as far as mandate relief, and it didn't get accomplished. And I think it's things like that that really could have lessened the cost in our local governments, and we didn't do it. And unless we do a good job at it, then the tax cap could actually wind up crippling our governments in the future years.
I was taken by what you said about Massachusetts. That was a state that had as its nickname Taxachusetts.
That's right.
And had some of the highest tax rates of any state in the nation. I mean, we all, you know, you look at it and say, oh, the Kennedys and, you know, all the spending, but they turned that around.
Yes.
And now, as you said, they are a model for what other states in the nation need to do. It's not just New York State. I mean, we've seen Indiana and Wisconsin and Ohio and all these other states facing these huge fiscal problems for a lot of the same reasons as here in New York. And it has been, I think, just a fabulous thing to see the discussions that took place during this legislative session. Talks about actual open discussion about spending levels and taxing levels. just like what we're seeing right now with the debt ceiling debate in Washington. So it's like a breath of fresh air to see that lawmakers actually understand maybe we are borrowing too much and spending too much, and figuring out what to do about it.
Right. It can't be business as usual anymore. People have had it with it, and our economy can't take it anymore. So there has to be some sort of change in our model.
What else should we discuss about this 2011 legislative session? The ethics reform. We've talked about that here on this program. Were you pleased with what the legislature and the governor got through in terms of cleaning up its own house, so to speak?
Again, I think it was the deck was half full as far as I was concerned. I think there's going to be a lot better disclosure and hopefully give people some more faith in their government. I think the biggest problem in what we passed, though, is that for any future member of the legislature who was elected 2012 or afterwards, if you go and commit a crime and you've been profiting by your state office and you get convicted, we can go and take away your pension. But we don't do it for the current members of the legislature. And I think that's one thing that needs to be done. Again, the ethics reform was a good start in the right direction, probably 80% what we needed, but to really finish the job, why don't we do a constitutional amendment saying that if you're in the legislature and you commit a crime, your pension's gone. I think that's one last thing we need to make this thing better. On
face value, it seems ludicrous to do it that way, because why would it be proper to do it for the incoming members? Why would you say you'd want to grandfather in the existing members and say, oh, well, it's okay that if you do something wrong using your state position to benefit yourself, we'll still give you your pension. Why makes it right for those people to be able to do it and not for the newer members coming in? I don't know that anybody could explain that.
It's hypocritical. There's no rational explanation whatsoever. The argument why they couldn't do it in a simple bill is that you may do a constitutional amendment because once you're in the pension system, you can't change your benefit afterwards. So my answer is, do the constitutional amendment. Could have put it in the same bill. Do it immediately. No reason not to. And again, this is another way I think where some people protect themselves if you're just going to push to other people in the future. No. The leadership must start today with the current members, and that's what should happen.
I suppose one of the major knocks on the 2011 legislative session is the lack of job creation legislation that was not only passed, but even talked about. There was very little talked about in terms of what are we going to do to bring people and businesses back into New York State.
Today, actually, the Governor Cuomo is announcing the start of his regional economic panels, which are there to try to go and help with job development. There will actually be about $1 billion worth of some grant funding to be able to happen. That's the next big thing. You know, people said to me after session, well, Cuomo's done everything he wanted to do. He could pretty much, take it easy next 3.5 years. And I said, oh, no. I said, we are hemorrhaging jobs in the state. And I tell people, you think it's bad in Long Island? Try going upstate, where they're absolutely decimated. And why should we care on Long Island? Because when people upstate are not working and paying taxes, that's more that we have to go and shell out to help run this New York State. So that's one thing we have to get started on immediately, because unless that's done, everything we all do is window dressing. You can go and have a tax cap, keeping taxes lowered, but unless people are coming into the state and doing jobs and paying taxes, providing revenue, we really haven't gotten accomplished what we need to.
And economic development councils may go some to figuring some of this out. But I've heard it said by many that all the state really needs to do is figure out what to do about its taxing situation and just making New York State, again, an affordable place in which to live and in which to do business.
That's what our goal is, and we're far from that goal at this point.
All right. Well, if you folks watching want to know how to reach out to your representative, Tom McKevitt, easy thing for you to do. Get a hold of him at his Garden City office. The phone number 739-5119. Start pestering him about when is the next car seat safety check coming to your area. And any other issue that they can help you out with, just give the folks there a call and they'll be glad to help you out. And Tom McKevitt, thanks again for coming back to Albany and checking things out and letting us know what was going on here in the 2011 session. We'll hope to see you folks next time for our next Assembly Calendar.